So I just want to welcome everybody to our webinar tonight, our first this webcast, where we are going to hear from naturalist David Lukas. David is going to let us in on the secrets of birdsong. My name is Rob Clavins. I'm the Northeast Oregon Field Coordinator based out of Wallowa County in Northeast Oregon. In addition to having David, we're joined by my colleague Danielle Mosier, who leads our wildlife program. I'm excited for this program. We were just talking before everybody came on that birds are starting to come back for all of us at different rates. Just got my first hummingbird yesterday, which was exciting. Although I felt really terrible for it when I saw that it was 28 degrees last night. So we got our our feeders up, but hopefully they're all doing well. I met David at the Crane Festival in Othello, Washington last year, and was just absolutely blown away by his presentation on bird anatomy. It was one of those really great moments in your life where you think you know everything. You've been learning your whole entire life, and then all of a sudden you realize just how little you know and how much more cool stuff there is to learn about. So I immediately subscribed to his newsletter, which in my inbox brings a little bit of joy and readable information that I really need. The website is lucasguides.com. And if you're a person who's still curious about nature, I'd really strongly suggest you sign up and check out his website as well. David also leads walks, talks, classes, workshops. He's written 7 books and contributed to dozens more. And I'm just really excited to have him with us here today. I'd plan to give a brief update about some of the efforts that we have supported here in the Blue Mountains, where we supported the Forest Service and Klamath Bird Observatory in obtaining and monitoring remote bird song sensors that we hope are going to better inform management in the forested public lands of Eastern Oregon. But as seems to be the pattern these days, we have another attack on environmental protections that instead has us bringing in Danielle, who's going to update on some efforts that are really urgent right now to defend the Endangered Species Act. David will bring us home, and then we'll be followed up with some question and answers by both David and Danielle, or for both David and Danielle. We usually do get a flood of questions right at the end of the presentation, so the sooner we can get your questions in, the easier it is for us to organize and answer them. So feel free to ask questions at any point. A recording of this program will be emailed out tomorrow, and we'll post it on our website, OregonWild.com, in the resource section. If you got a raffle ticket, thank you very much. Your support allows us to continue doing these presentations and carry out our mission. The raffle will be open through this evening, so if after the presentation you decided you want to enter, you can do that by finding this event on the Oregon Wild homepage. We'll select winners tomorrow morning, and you'll be contacted by email to verify your shipping address. In addition to raffling off Chandra Legui's Ancient Forest Hiking Guide and an Oregon Wild t-shirt, David has also generously donated a signed copy of his book, A Year of Watching Wildlife, which you can see there on the screen. And just before we get started, I know a lot of you already know us well, but there are probably some new folks. And so I just want to let you know that Oregon Wild is a statewide conservation organization and advocacy group that is focused on protecting and safeguarding Oregon's wildlands, wildlife, and waters since 1974. We are a public interest organization, so we rely on people like you to be involved, and I hope you'll check out our website for ways that you can be involved. We're coming from a number of different places throughout the Pacific Northwest. Here in the Snake River watershed where I live, people have lived here and been interacting with birds for no less than 15,000 years. Well, we're sharing information from our respective perspectives tonight. I just want to acknowledge that there are many ways of understanding the world and our living relations that are not represented on this webinar, and encourage you to seek out and learn those perspectives in addition to the ones that we're going to share here tonight. So with no further ado, I'm excited to introduce my colleague, Danielle Mosier, who will start us off and then be followed by speaker, writer, and naturalist David Lukas. And we're excited to just have you all with us. So Danielle, why don't you get us started?
Thanks so much, Rob. I just to address something I've seen in the Q&A already, we do have the chat feature disabled. So folks had mentioned, oh, I don't see a way to do the chat. So if you have questions, it goes into the Q&A section, not into the chat function. So just wanted to clarify that for everyone. Okay, let's get to my screen here. Excuse me as we take a moment to do that. So thank you, and thank you, David, for allowing a couple minutes to just talk about what Rob mentioned, which is, the Endangered Species Act, and unfortunately, some attacks that we are seeing at the federal level. And so I don't want to spend so much time in the weeds and the doom and gloom. I really want to be broad with this, just because we are obviously all receiving so much negative information these days, and it's overwhelming. I mean, it is for me anyway. But I think, especially as we're talking about birdsong and just the incredible power of nature and so much we still don't understand, for us at Oregon Wild, it's really important that we protect things like the Endangered Species Act that have been a bedrock environmental law that have, it prevented extinction for over 99% of species that have had to go on the endangered species list. So it's a really important tool, and we want to protect it now and for future generations to enjoy what we all love about nature and wildlife. And so that's why I really wanted to just take a moment and have a quick call to action about what is going on right now at the federal level. Again, if you have specific questions, you want to know the exact law, bill, provision that is under attack, I'm happy to answer that question, but I'm trying not to overwhelm you with all of the nuts and bolts of those. But suffice it to say, like a lot of environmental protections at the federal level, it is under attack by members of Congress and the Trump administration. And so organizations like Oregon Wild and many others are pushing back as best as we can. And, one thing I want to highlight, because the act has been so incredibly successful. And for those who don't know, actually one of the first fish species to ever be removed from the endangered species list is a fish species endemic to Oregon. It's called the Oregon chub. And so, we want the act to continue to be successful and to continue to foster and support recovery of our most imperiled species and habitat, which is a very important thing, that these two things are very much connected, which is why I loved this picture of the great gray owl looking up at the ponderosa, because, habitat and wildlife go hand in hand. So what can you do? Well, our senators in Oregon have been relatively strong over the years in protecting the Endangered Species Act. We expect that they will continue to be strong supporters of the ESA, but they are also being bombarded with so many different things that are happening at the congressional level. And we just want to make sure and encourage them to stay strong in supporting this incredibly important law. So what you can do, maybe right after this call, maybe tomorrow morning, call Senators Wyden and Merkley. You can see their DC phone numbers on the slide, and just thank them for their support and just encourage them to stay strong. And whether this is your first call to them or your 100th call to them, just know that this does make a difference. It is impactful, and it is very helpful for organizations like ours. For example, I am setting up meetings currently with Senator Wyden and Merkley's staff to talk about the Endangered Species Act. And so when I go talk to them in a week or two, if they have been hearing from constituents about the need to protect this, they're more likely, to really hear me, because they know that people have been reaching out and are supporting this. So it does work, and it only takes 30 seconds for each. And to be honest, you probably won't even get a live person. It's likely you'll leave a message, but they tally those and they do pay attention. So please and thank you. We need to do everything we can to protect what I imagine David's illuminating presentation is going to show us, which is the power of nature, the mystery of nature, and why we need to protect it for future generations. So thank you, and I'll turn it to David.
Should I go ahead and start, Rob?
Absolutely. I will just remind folks, though, you can put questions in the chat as we're going on, so that we're not just flooded at the end. But yeah, David, take us away.
Okay. Thank you, Rob and Danielle. And I can't see faces, but thank you everyone for coming out in support of Oregon Wild and the incredible work they do. And thank you for sharing your love of the natural world. We all need to lift each other up and help each other out. And one great way to do that is to all come together and learn from presentations like this. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and then I'll just start doing my introduction from there. And let's see if it works. Okay. And Rob, does that look good from your end? Okay,
Yes,
thumbs up. Okay. Well, Rob did such an excellent job introducing me. There's really nothing more to say, except that I've spent my life working as a freelance naturalist. I started memorizing field guides when I was 5 years old, memorizing them by pictures. And then when I could read, I memorized the text. And I've been doing that my whole life. I still study field guides every night until about midnight and just passionately study every aspect of the world, every corner of the world. And over time, those pieces start filtering together and beginning to weave webs of knowledge in my mind that I like to share with people. Basically, I'm out every day hiking in nature, taking notes, coming up with questions. I come home and I have a huge library. 4 sides of me are natural history books. And I look up questions, I research what I learn, and then I turn those into books, articles, presentations, interviews, whatever I can do, however I can share that information and that passion, that curiosity with people. I'm always looking for opportunities to connect with people like this. My most recent project, as Rob mentioned, is my Lukas Guides newsletter. So every week I write a nature newsletter where I explore a different in-depth, I explore a different nature topic. And as Rob knows well, the topics are just incredible. I mean, I blow my mind almost every week. And I'll just mention a couple of my books before I get started. Rob mentioned this one, A Year Watching Wildlife. Just so you know what this is a Lonely Planet handbook for the top 200 wildlife spectacles in the world, arranged week by week for the best time to go see them. So it's actually a really cool book. Another book I'm really passionate about is I spent 4 years studying the English language, and I wrote a book called Language Making Nature about how and why to create new words for speaking of nature. So just a deep dive into English language. I'm all over the place. Any way to share and study nature, I'm on it. So tonight we're going to talk about bird song, and geez, what a great topic and what a great time of year. I'm so excited we're doing this talk tonight. Just 2 days ago, I was out and there were so many birds singing, and at least 6, 7, 8 species that I had not seen yet this year. So I was thrilled to see them back, thrilled to hear them. I see we had a question in the questions about the Merlin app. It's so cool to hold that up and remind yourself the names of bird songs that you forgot over the course of the winter. So we've been studying bird songs for a very long time, way back in human history. And this talk has some sound clips. I hope the sound is going to work out. Some might be a little bit quieter, some might be a little bit louder, and hopefully it all works out. It's a little bit of a complicated talk for that reason. But just to start out, I want to just express that it seems like humans have been studying birdsong as far back as the Paleolithic, and it's telling that the oldest known musical instrument ever found is a 42,000-year-old flute made out of bird bone. So there's a lot of different materials you could make a flute out of. But the fact that even before there was written language or language that we know of even, people were already connecting the idea of bird song and the beginning of human arts and culture and song. And I love, let's see, let me call up my pen here. I love this quote from the 1st century BC. It's just one example. Way back when people were just starting to write things down, already they were saying, "Thus birds instructed man and taught him songs before his art began." Already people were connecting the idea of human art and culture and music to birdsong. And I think that's just so cool. And there's been a tradition of countless poets and writers, philosophers who have engaged with birdsong in some way, including classical music scores. We have Beethoven on this list. The philosopher Immanuel Kant wrote a book called The Critique of Judgment. And in this book, he makes an interesting distinction that I think is worth keeping in mind for this talk. He says, if there's a bird in your backyard singing a very simple melody all day long, you'd be like, "Oh, I love hearing that bird. It's so beautiful, these sweet musical notes." But if someone was in your backyard playing the same 3 notes on a flute over and over again all day, you'd go out and strangle them, right? So there's something about birdsong that's sublime and raw. And goes way beyond our human arts. And that kind of connection that we have with birdsong, I think, is what inspires all of the study of birdsong, all the engagement with birdsong we're going to be talking about tonight. So we've had countless poets that have engaged with birdsong in different ways, trying to make their poems kind of mimic the cadence and sound of birdsongs to be as beautiful birdsongs. And so I pull out as one example the poet Walt Whitman. And there's a famous old naturalist, John Burroughs, who told Walt Whitman, "Let the mockingbird be your muse." And if you look at Walt Whitman's poetry, it is perfect mockingbird cadence. So for example, this stanza right here, soothe, 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 but my love soothes not me, not me. Spot on mockingbird cadence, stanza after stanza through Whitman's poetry. And so while poets and writers are struggling with birdsong through their words, musicians are doing it with their music. I mentioned some classical music scores by Beethoven, Vivaldi as examples. In 1921, this fellow F. Schuler Matthews tried to put all the birdsong in North America into musical notation. And so this is a wood thrush song written out as musical score. I'm going to play just a little clip of it being played on a piano. And I want you to listen to this and think about whether this works for you. So here's our first clip. Let's make sure it works. Fingers crossed. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to play a clip of the actual bird song, and I want you to tell me whether you think this works or think about whether this works. So here is the bit of musical notation. Here's the actual bird song that we're going to play, just a real short clip. Can you hear that, Rob? Thumbs up?
David,
I guess so.
we just have we had a delay. Can you play that one again? Because I talked
Yep.
over it. I think we just have a short delay.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay. It kind of falls apart, right? That piano score doesn't exactly mimic the bird song. But before the advent of modern recording equipment, it makes sense that this would have been the only way to capture and share the nuances and cadences of bird songs and try to communicate what's going on with bird songs. Well, all of this changed in World War II. So for the first time, we had a tool that gave us a visual representation of sound as it was created. Essentially, it's letting our eyes do the hearing for us because we can see the shape of the sound as it's being created. There's two components to sonograph. One is the oscillogram here in the top chart. Going across the horizontal axis is time. The vertical axis is sound volume. So in this case, as you go across in time, the sound starts silent. It goes up to a peak, drops off to silence, is silent, goes up to a peak, goes across, drops back down. Not that interesting. But the sonogram is what's going to be, because this gives us a picture of sound in terms of frequency. And this is the rate at which sound waves are being produced in thousands of cycles per second. So in this case, again, time is going across the horizontal axis, and frequency is the vertical axis. So this bird song here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 cycles per second. Then it drops down to 3,500 cycles per second. Okay. So this concept of cycles per second or frequency is going to be hard to understand. So let's use the example of a drum head, and we're striking the drum head with a stick and we hear sound. So what is going on? Okay, so when you strike the drum head with a stick, what's happening is the drum head bounces down, and as the drum head bounces down, it creates a vacuum of air molecules. And then when it bounces up, it pushes the air molecules and creates a dense band of air molecules. And this cycle of dense and not dense, plus minus, I like to think of it, is one cycle. So thousands of these vibrations or pressure waves, I guess, are reaching your ear per second, and we're hearing that as sound. If you take the drum head and you tighten it or get smaller, it bounces faster. You get higher frequency, more cycles per second. You hear a higher frequency sound. If you take the drum head and you make it bigger or you loosen it, it bounces slower and you hear a lower number of cycles per second, a lower frequency. Okay, so this is how sound is produced, and this is basically what we're hearing with the sonograph. So in the talk, I'm going to have a lot of these sonograms like this here. And in the talk, because it's complicated to play each one, I'm going to have them be static images. So I'm going to do a little demonstration of what's going on when we play these static images. I'm using a software called Raven Light software. It's a free software from the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. You just download it, put it on your computer. You can play any sound through it. We're focusing on birdsong tonight. And you can see around the edges of this software, there's a jillion little parameters you can play with. You can change sound in so many different ways to study it and understand it in different ways. Um, and when you hit the play button, what happens is a green bar goes across the picture, and as it hits each part of the picture, it plays the sound under the green bar. So here's an example of what's going on. Now, that's a little hard to understand, so I like to play with the parameters and do it at half speed. Now listen to this. Now that is an incredible tool. You can see that happen. You can see the shape. You can begin to name the parts of that and understand what you're hearing that happens so fast in real life that you don't understand what's going on. It's a great tool also for learning how to learn how to identify, recognize, memorize bird songs. And in the hands of a scientist, it becomes an incredibly powerful tool because these finely shaped sonograms, these graphs, every part of it can be measured and analyzed. You can compare the same bird 3 years in a row to watch how its song evolves. You can compare three birds sitting next to each other and look at how their songs are changing or how they're responding to each other. You can measure the same song from three different birds in three different areas and look how they vary across the landscape. It becomes an incredibly powerful tool. So humans make our sounds in our voice box here, but for birds, they're making it in an area called the syrinx, which is located in the center of the chest. And the sound that's made here in the syrinx is changed as it goes up through the windpipe, out through the mouth, gets modified by the tongue and the beak, and comes out into the world as a different sound is being made down here. And the syrinx is located in the center of the chest. And when you do a bird dissection, you have to go down through lots of different layers to find it and pull aside bone and tissue and everything. And it's located where the windpipe comes down and splits into bronchi that go to each lung. And this junction right here is where the syrinx is located. It's a very distinctive feature in a bird. And it has circular cartilage rings around the trachea, and then half cartilage rings around the bronchi. And these cartilage rings give it structural support because a bird is moving, it's fighting, it's in the wind. And if every time it moved, its windpipe was being squished and moved, its song would get changed. So these structural supports, the rings, keep the song consistent no matter how the bird moves and responds to the world around it. And then around the outside of the cartilage rings are muscles that attach to each cartilage ring. In this diagram on the right, these black areas are cross sections of the cartilage rings. And then between each cartilage ring is a membrane. So when a bird sings, these muscles pull the cartilage rings to different tensions. Remember the drum head being tightened and loosened. And what you end up with is, see the stippled area between each cartilage ring? Each one of those becomes a little tiny drum head that the tension of it's being controlled and modulated independently. And all of those little drum heads added up make the beautiful bird song that we hear. We also have a group of birds called songbirds, which have even more beautiful songs. They have extra muscles, extra cartilage rings, and they have an added cartilage ring called the pecillus right here in the center with added membranes on the inside. The songbirds have the most complex, most beautiful songs in the world. So there are 31 orders of birds in the world. 30 of them not song. These birds have very simple syrinxes and they are born with their song. So if you take an egg from one of those birds and raise it in isolation, that little chick hatches up and it sings the perfect song. It's born with its song. One order of birds in the world is called songbirds. and they have a complex pharynx and they learn their song. So if you take one of these eggs and raise it in isolation, guess what it says when it grows up? Just garbled noise, because it doesn't know the song. It's never heard the song, hasn't been taught the song. Okay. So when you look at the organization of all the birds in the world, and here's a field guide as an example. So if you take a field guide and start flipping through it, let's see how I can turn it. If you start flipping through the field guide, right here at flycatchers is the halfway point. Right there. That's flycatchers right here. So the front half of the book here is 30 orders of birds. The second half of the book is one order of birds, the songbirds. And the field guide is organized so that the front of the book over here is the most primitive birds. And as you go through the book towards the end, the last birds are the most advanced birds. So what that means is right here at the halfway point, when flycatchers evolved, and from that point on, you have songbirds, half of the birds in the world evolved very quickly because the ability to learn songs and share songs that you've learned allowed half of the species of birds to evolve very, very quickly. It's super important. And here's something that's really cool. There are only 5 groups of animals in the world that learn songs. Songbirds are one. What are the other 4 groups of animals that learn songs? Well, one would be humans and primates. One would be whales and dolphins. One would be elephants, another large mammal that have complex vocalizations. And then we have bats, which are small mammals with very complex vocalizations. So 5 groups of animals in the world learn songs. It's a very specialized group of animals, and songbirds are one of them. Not only that, but some songbirds have 2 syrinxes. So each bronchi is independently controlled with a separate syrinx that has different muscles, different nerves, and sings independent songs. So you have 2 songs stacked on top of each other at the same time. So we already listened to this wood thrush at the beginning. I'm going to play it again. This time I drew a little brown box around what each syrinx is saying, and look how they fall apart. See, there's 2 independent songs being sung at the same time by 2 separate syrinxes. They're stacked on top of each other, creating incredible harmonics. So here is the wood thrush song again. So that's a beautiful song, right? But again, I'm going to play it at half speed because this is where you really begin to pick up on what's happening here. This is an incredible song. So I'm going to play it at half speed. Listen to this. Isn't that amazing? That is 2 voice boxes overlapping each other, singing at the same time, and creating incredible harmonics. I'll play it again because I love it so much here. So as we classically define a song, bird song, it's their most musical, their most elaborate vocalizations, and a call is just its simplest notes. But what's surprising is that we've been taught that songs are used for courtship, but scientists have never been able to prove that songs are used to attract females, and they've never been able to define what a bird song is. So why is that? Well, there's about 10,000 species of birds in the world, and each one is doing something a little different, okay? So for example, there's a bird in Africa where all day long, the males are in their territories, fighting, setting up territories, attracting females, helping out at the nest, whatever they're doing, and they're using their call notes all day long. Then in the evening, the sun is going down, females are in the nest with the eggs and the babies, everything's going to sleep. The males line up on branches, shoulder by shoulder to shoulder, and sing their hearts out. It has nothing to do with territory, has nothing to do with courtship. It's some other behavior that they haven't decided what it is yet. So with examples like that out of 10,000 species in the world, you can't just say a song is this and a call is this. So in this talk, I'm just going to be using them interchangeably. And really, just keep in mind, we're talking about a big bag of bird vocalizations. You could call them songs, you could call them calls, but they're just bird sounds. So we're going to talk about all of them. Okay, so imagine we're out on a bird walk together. We're all walking along, walking along, looking for birds. We walk underneath a tree. A bird sings up there. So as bird watchers, what do? Up comes our binoculars. We're all looking up there. Oh, there it is. Oh my God, it's a yellow-rumped warbler, right? Well, that's exactly what a predator would do, which means that every time you open your mouth and you sing, you are risking your life by revealing your location to predators. So you are saying something that's so important to you that you're willing to risk your life to say it. So what would a bird want to say that it's willing to risk its life for? Well, obviously it wants to say what species it is, right? I'm a yellow-rumped warbler. I'm an American goldfinch. You want to say what species you are. You want to say something about what region you belong to. So I don't know, a song sparrow of Portland is going to have a different song than a song sparrow of Seattle. You want to identify where you belong in the landscape, and a female's not going to mate with you if you're not in the right spot. So if you're going to risk your life to sing something, are you going to say, "Yoo-hoo, ladies, I'll be available to breed next week"? No, you're not going to risk your life to say that. You're going to say, "Yahoo, ladies, I want to breed now," right? So it's going to say something about your reproductive condition. Do you think distance away matters to another male? Well, it probably does, because another male is a competitor, right? So if you can hear his song and he's too close to you, that's a potential threat. That matters a lot. But does distance away matter to a female listening to a male? Not really, because a female can fly closer if she likes you, or she can fly away if she doesn't like you. So the distance doesn't matter. She can move that distance however she wants. So the amount of song that you sing indicates your health, because if you are a healthy male, you're going to have the best territory. And by definition, the best territory is the one that's rich in food. And the more food you have, the more quickly you can start singing, the more hours you're going to sing, because you're not looking for food all the time. And they've done experiments where they've given males supplemental food, and the males that are given extra food sing more. They attract the first females of the season. They end up having more babies, greater nesting success. Other aspects of your health show up in your song. If you have a disease or parasites, that can get imprinted in your song. If you had any developmental issues while you're growing up, that gets imprinted in your song. I put down here mood, but you could think of it as style or attitude. So imagine if you were at a party with a bunch of people and there's a guy in the corner of the room talking. Don't you think you could hear from the tone of his voice what kind of person he is? Is he timid? Is he cocky? Is he a take charge kind of guy? Is he respectful of other males? Well, you can imagine that a female bird can hear that too, and that it matters to them. Longevity is really simple. So the longer a male lives, the more practiced and nuanced his song becomes. And he's signaling with his song, hey, I've lived a long time. I have the genes that I can pass on to our babies so they'll live a long time too. So that's a great signal of your genetic health. And then this last one is really important. We're going to return to this, but basically you want to just signal that you're part of the neighborhood. Basically, it's like if you go to a football game and everyone sings the national anthem, or everyone sings the football team song, you want to signal that you're part of the group, and birds do this too. And if you're not able to sing the neighborhood song, females aren't going to mate with you. But in general, if we look at all of these messages, what's going on is that a singer is trying to manipulate the behavior of other birds, and at the same time, they're trying to manipulate him. And over time, this has led to a incredible system of strategy and counter strategy that encodes an incredible amount of information. And any bird that listens and participates is going to succeed and pass on its genes. So we've been talking about song, but birds actually have a lot of different kinds of vocalizations. So I'm going to use the example of chickadees. Everyone knows chickadees, you have them in your backyard, right? Chickadees have 14 different kinds of vocalizations. Song is just one of them. So I'm going to look at 3 kinds of chickadee vocalizations. We have the standard chickadee call. You hear this in your backyard. You hear it around bird feeders. You hear it when they're mildly alarmed or excited. There's 4 components, A, B, C, and D. In this example, it's A, B, D, 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 chickadee, D, D, D. And in a study this woman did recently, she found in the area she was in that the number of D notes had a different message. So if it was 2 D notes, it meant there's a red-tailed hawk, chickadee. If it had 4 D notes, it meant watch out, there's a pig meow, chickadee. I think that's 4. Here's that example. And then we have gargle calls, very different kind of vocalization. These are complex sounds that males use in aggressive interactions, but at close range with each other. So each population of chickadees has about 24 notes, and each male samples from those 24 available notes and mixes it into his own combination. And basically, he's saying, "Hey, I'm Steve." And another one is saying, "Hey, I'm Joe." It's their unique call for who they are. And here's a gargle call. And then we have what you would probably call their song, "Hey, Sweetie," or some people say cheeseburger. And they sing it in the spring from high perches as if they're serenading for mates. And one other thing this example shows that I love is that birds will also do song shifts. So they don't just sing the same song all day long. They will shift their songs to kind of create some complexity. It keeps their vocal cords and their muscles and nerves from wearing out, and it keeps their listeners from getting bored. So this is a very simple song, "Hey, Sweetie," but even in that, you can hear the song shift. So when I play it, I want you to listen for that. It goes, "Hey, sweetie, hey, sweetie, hey, sweetie, hey, sweetie." That's a song shift in there. Very subtle, but it's there. Hear that? So you can hear that if you start listening to bird songs too. So lots of different kinds of vocalizations here, but tonight we're going to focus on song. But even within song, males have lots of different versions of the song they sing, and each version is called a song type. And all of the song types that a male sing are its repertoire. So we'll take the example of towhees. Here's the eastern towhee. We have spotted towhees on the west coast. And in the case of towhees, they have 3 to 8 different song types that they sing. And their strategy in general is to sing a song type about 30 times. Then they go to the next song type, sing that about 30 times, go to the next song type, sing that 30 times. If that's the end of the repertoire, they go back to the beginning, or also keep going to the end and then go back to the beginning. So think about how we listen to birds. So imagine again, we're walking along as a group, we're all like talking and looking for birds. Up comes a spotted towhee. It starts singing. Up comes our binoculars. Wow, look at that incredible bird. Look at that red eye. What an amazing bird. We whip out our field guide. We flip through the field guide. There's the towhee. Check. And then we keep walking. So what has that bird been doing that whole time? Well, it's probably been singing one song type, and that's what we hear, and we think that's what they're doing. But if we sit down and have lunch and stay for a while, we're going to start noticing the bird go through its repertoire. So I'm going to play 3 song types, each one twice, and see if you can hear this. Hear that? I'm going to play them again with the sonograms so you can get a visual picture and begin to see in your mind how they're different. Same things, the same 3 ones again. Isn't that cool? And so birds are doing this all the time, but we're not tuning in and hearing this level of subtlety. And here's another example from a common bird. You probably know red-winged blackbirds. If you're around a marsh, you hear them conqueree, conqueree. They're super noisy right now. And in their case, they sing 4 to 8 song types, is in what's in a male's repertoire. So again, here's 2 song types, each one twice. See if you can hear this. Isn't that cool? At least you think it's just males doing all the fun singing and stuff. Females vocalize too. They have a whole nother world of vocalizations they're doing. And in a lot of species, the females can actually sing as well. But what happens when you sing? You reveal your presence to predators and you risk your life. So females don't need to do that. Their job is to stay inconspicuous, sit on the nest, take care of the babies, not draw attention to themselves. So they don't need to sing. Males are the ones that have to have the flashy colors, sing the loud songs, and risk their lives. But females can sing, and a situation where they often would do that is if they lose their mate, a female might sing until she attracts a new mate and then stop singing and go back to what she was doing before. Usually that happens within an hour. It doesn't take long to attract another male. So in this case, red-winged blackbirds, what are these males doing? They have that flashy red epaulette, that shoulder patch. It's gorgeous. His job is to attract as many females to his territory as possible. He wants to create a harem, right? So he's up there showing off his feathers. He's going, hello, ladies, look at my red shoulder. Come check out my territory and join my harem. And at the same time, the female's sitting there with her hands on her hips going, well, hello, buddy, get over here and help at the nest, right? So he's up there singing his song, and she comes over him with a wall of sound and drowns out his message. So basically, he's going, hello, ladies, I'm, and she drowns out his message. So here's an example of that. And you can see in her song here on the right in the red, it's just a wall of sound. It drowns out any possibility of hearing what his message underneath it is. Basically, she's scolding him. So not all bird calls are going to be unique and variable, and many species want to share calls that they all need in common. So for example, every small bird in the neighborhood needs to know if there's a hawk hunting nearby. So all the small birds are going to use the same alarm call to announce that the hawk is there. And the reason for this is very, very simple. If you understand if you understand other birds' alarm calls and they save your life, and then if they understand your calls, you save their life, right? So you just understand each other's calls and you save each other's lives. So imagine we're a group of sparrows hopping on the ground. We're all hopping around, eating seeds on the ground. And I look up and I see a hawk screaming in. What do? Watch out, everyone. Here comes a wham. Guess who gets eaten for revealing his location? Well, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to risk my life. So all the small birds have agreed on the same kind of call, which is a very high, thin call that they can hear, but no one can pinpoint. They can't pinpoint it. The hawk can't pinpoint it. They can all hear it. All the small birds just freeze in place and no one moves. The hawk looks around, can't see anything, and gives up and leaves. Okay, so here's 3 versions of that. And just a note of caution, this is very, like I said, very high and thin. I can hardly hear it right here at my computer. If you don't hear it, just know it's super high, super thin. So robin, titmouse, oops, titmouse. I don't know if you can hear that, but so they can all hear it, but no one knows where it's coming from. They just know they need to freeze. Okay. Likewise, at the same time, an owl is also a threat to all the neighborhood small birds, but it's a different kind of threat. So what is an owl doing in the daytime? Well, it's usually sleeping, right? An owl's just like, leave me alone. I don't want to be bothered, right? It's not hunting or anything. So in this case, all the small birds use a mobbing call, which is a broad spectrum, very noisy call. Hey, everyone, there's an owl right here. Come on over, let's get this owl. And all the small birds come in and the owl's just like, leave me alone, right? So here's 3 examples of here's an owl. So another way that bird songs vary is with dialects, regional dialects. We alluded to that earlier. And what's going to start out as just subtle differences between different neighborhoods of birds can over time lead to the evolution of new species. And the reason for that is because birds like to hang out with and breed with birds that sound like themselves. They don't like to hang out with and breed with ones that don't sound familiar to them. So here is a classic study they did with a bird called white-crowned sparrows. And this example is from a study they did in California, where the sparrows live in chaparral habitat, which is a very dry, dense, brushy habitat. We have one population here in the upper left, all singing song type A. Then a huge fire comes through, burns out all the habitat, and no birds can live there because there's no vegetation. But over time, vegetation starts springing up, and a few hardy birds move into this area and start creating little population centers. And if they're successful, these little population centers start expanding out, and they're breeding with each other because they sing the same songs. They have different song types now, and they continue expanding out until all these different little subpopulations all meet up. And see these lines in the lower left? These lines can be very narrow in the landscape, a couple yards across. And these birds never cross these lines. They stick with the birds that they know and sound familiar. They don't cross over to a different dialect. And right here in this kind of this model, we have one dialect A now becoming A, A1, A2, and A3. These are the subtle differences that can lead to the evolution of new species. And this is why there's so many songbirds that evolved so quickly. Here's a real world example with a really cool bird called marsh wren. And during the ice ages, these giant ice fields came down the center of the Great Plains and cut the population in half. The red is where they breed now. Cut the population in half. There's a West Coast population, East Coast population that were separated for thousands of years. And then the ice melted, the population expanded, and now they meet along this green line, which goes down the center of the Great Plains. And this green line goes right down the middle of marshes. The birds on one side of the line sing one dialect. The birds on the other side sing the other dialect. They never cross that line. They never breed with each other. And essentially, there's two species now. They haven't been recognized yet, but there's basically two species. So here's what the dialects sound like, Western and then Eastern. And that's enough to keep them from breeding with each other. Isn't that cool? Just separate them for a few thousand years, and all of a sudden they're singing two different songs. Okay, so there's two main reasons why birds might sing. There's other reasons, but two main reasons. One is to proclaim your territory. One is to attract mates, right? We tend to think of males singing to attract mates, as if males were the entire focus of this entire system. But there's a growing body of evidence that females actually control the system, and the thinking that it's all males probably comes because it was all male scientists for a long time, and they thought everything was about male birds. But now it's looking like female choice drives the evolution of birds because females are making all the choices. Males can't do anything except sing their hearts out and hope for the best. Females are making all the decisions about who they want to mate with, what they like, what they don't like. But it turns out that males face different needs depending on whether they're singing to defend a territory or to attract a mate. So imagine you're defending your territory. You're sitting here on this branch and your neighbor is a couple feet away. Well, it's a little bit more, but I don't want to get off my screen here. So this male is saying, "Hey, I'm Joe. This is my territory." And he's saying, "Hey, I'm Steve. This is my territory," right? And they're like face to face. They're a few feet apart yelling at each other. Well, they can't do that all day long. They can't do that all summer long. They're just going to get eaten by the first hawk that flies by because they're screaming at each other. So they use a special kind of vocalization that is a substitute for fighting, and it's kind of a hissy sound, and it breaks down very quickly. So we heard this with the gargle calls. Again, each gargle call is unique to each male. So, "Hey, I'm Steve. Hey, I'm Joe." And they break down very quickly. So when they're a few feet apart, they can hear it really clearly. But as soon as they start moving further and further apart, it just breaks down into background noise, and they don't need to respond to it. They only respond to it if they hear it clear and crisp up close. Okay, so here's the example of a kind of vocalization used for territorial defense. Okay, so imagine you're trying to attract a female. Okay, there's a female down here in Mexico. She's flying north to Canada. She's going north. She's 100 feet overhead. She's up there, 100 feet overhead. She's going fast. You're down here in the ground. Hi, I'm Joe. I'm Joe. Does she care if you're Joe? Can she hear you? No, she doesn't care if you're Joe and she can't hear you. So that's not going to work. So instead, you want to go, hello, I'm a male yellow-rumped warbler. Can she hear you? Yes, she can hear you. And does she care that you're a male of her species? Yes, she cares. She's going to come right down and check you out. If she likes you, she'll stay. She doesn't care if you're Joe and that's your territory. She just cares that you're the male of her species. So you need a different kind of vocalization. We heard this already with the chickadee, the cheeseburger, Hey Sweetie song. And what's interesting about this one is you can hear this a great distance. I mean, I think you can hear this a quarter mile away in the forest. Very clear, great distance. And what's important is all the information in that song is carried that entire distance. It doesn't break down over distance. So everything you're trying to say gets carried that whole way. And here's where it starts getting really interesting. Each male recognizes the songs of his neighbors. And in fact, neighbors share many of the same songs, which means that it's immediately apparent when a stranger shows up and upsets the balance in your neighborhood. And this really matters because a stranger doesn't have a territory is going to be a problem, right? So I'm not going to play this one here with the indigo bunting, but look at the sonogram here, the top one, and look at the shape of the male's song, and then look at his neighbor here in the middle. Look at their sonograms. Do you think they recognize each other? Yeah, they're almost identical. The songs are almost identical. They're Shim's song. And then here at the bottom is what happened when a stranger showed up. He can't even pretend like his song is. It's time to react and chase him away, right? And what oops, I don't know if it says my internet connection is unstable. Hopefully I'm not losing this.
We can still hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you for checking in. So not only do males know each other, but they know where they belong. So here's a classic study they did with an East Coast bird called ovenbirds. They took 3 males next to each other. They removed male 1 here on the left and played his song through a loudspeaker on the border of male 2. So what does male 2 do? Not much. There's male 1 singing away. He's in the right spot. Doesn't matter. He might sing back, but it doesn't really matter. Then they took the song of male 3 and played it through the same loudspeaker. And what does male 2 do? Male 2 goes bonkers. So why does he go bonkers? Does he know male 3? Yeah, of course he knows male 3. Male 3 is his next door neighbor, but male 3 is in the wrong place now. And that is not a boundary they've agreed on. They've agreed on this boundary, but male 3 is now in the wrong spot. That requires action. Time to assert a new boundary and start arguing and fighting over that. Here's a study they did with song sparrows. Okay, so these circles don't represent territories, they represent repertoires. So we have 4 birds next to each other in this study, and each circle is a bird's repertoire. So remember what a repertoire is. It's all of the song types that a male sings. And in the case of song sparrows, they sing about 10 song types in their repertoire. So bird 1, right here, bird 1 has A, N, B, F, E, H, J, K, and L. That's 9 song types. Bird 2 has O, P, I, D, B, E, F, H, J, K, L, 11 song types. So on average, about 10, right? And what we're seeing here when we look at this is look at the overlap, which means they're sharing song types. So in the case of bird 1 and bird 2, they share B, E, F, H, J, K, and L. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 song types they share with each other. And look at the diagram. They do not share these with any other bird. They only share those with each other. They have other song types in their repertoire, O-P-I-D or A and N, they never sing those with each other. They sing them with other birds. So within this shared repertoire, they have two main choices. They can do what's called a type match. So if bird one sings type B, bird two can sing B back. That's a type match. It's highly aggressive. They use it early in the breeding season when they're really working out territorial boundaries and who's dominant. But you can't do that all breeding season long. You would wear yourself out. It's ridiculous. So they use type matches, which is highly aggressive, early in the season to work things out. Once they figure out who's the boss and whose territory is whose, then they do what's called a repertoire match. So in this case, if bird one sings B, bird two is not going to sing B back. He's going to sing F, E, H, J, K, or L, which is a shared song, but it's not a threat. It's a way of saying, hey, we know each other. We're neighbors. We share these songs. I'm just singing one of our shared songs, right? It's very efficient. They don't need to fight anymore. They signal their relationship with each other without having to fight. And here's a real world example of this with our marvelous marsh wrens again. And in the case of marsh wrens, each population has about 150 to 200 songs. So imagine there's a marsh and a bunch of marsh wrens around it. They all sing the same repertoire of 150 to 200 songs. And all the males in the neighborhood know the same sequence. They know the repertoire. And within that sequence, they can skip ahead, they can fall back, they can double up. They make about 600 choices per hour per neighbor. And each one of those 600 choices is a different message. That's a ton of information they're sharing with each other. It's incredible. So this example is really amazing. I love this one. This is two males doing type matching, which remember is highly aggressive. They are working it out. The first male sings one song in the repertoire. Male two comes right in after him with the same song type. The first one switches to a new song type. The second one comes in with the new song type. They're just going back and forth, counter calling with each other, working their way through the sequence, highly aggressive. They will do this for hours or days until one of them gives up and runs out of food or energy and just says, I give up. You're the boss. You get this territory. You get this boundary. You make the decisions, whatever. So it's a way of signaling aggression. And this example is really cool. So they put a microphone out in the marsh. The one that's smaller is quieter. It's a little bit further away. The one that's bigger is louder. It's closer to the microphone. And listen to how they're doing this call and response as they go really quickly through their repertoire. Oops. That's amazing. So they'll do that 150 to 200 songs going through this sequence of types over and over again until one just gives up. Have you ever had growing up, did you have a sibling that imitated everything you said and how incredibly annoying that is? Well, you can imagine what it's like having another bird imitate everything you say. So this is a great example of that. So why do birds share songs? Well, it seems like birds are going to be sharing songs for a very simple reason. If you share songs, it means that you're long-term neighbors, and long-term neighbors are going to be preferred over newcomers because newcomers are going to be inherently expansionistic by their very nature. As soon as a newcomer comes in, it doesn't have a territory, it needs to kick and squirm and fight and carve out a space for itself. That's a threat because that space might come from your territory. But an old neighbor is going to respect your boundaries that you've already agreed upon, and there's no fighting involved, no arguing. They've already figured it out. And if you share songs, it makes this system very efficient. You're not spending all your time arguing over territories. You already know who your neighbors are and what your relationships are. And the songs you're singing over the course of the summer then just maintain and establish that relationship without having to rehash it out every single time. And if the more songs you share, and the bigger your repertoire, you're going to have a more efficient breeding season. You're going to have more babies. You're going to live longer. It's a win-win for everyone. And it makes everything so efficient. It's an incredible system. And this system is so important that older birds actively tutor, they teach young males that show up in a neighborhood. Think about it this way. You're an old male with a territory, and your neighbor's over here with his territory, and this youngster shows up. He's not a threat because he's still just a little pup, right? But he's starting to sing, and every time he sings, you're like, oh, I hear that. I better go over and check it out. And it's a waste of time. So the thing to do is just sit down with him, teach him your songs, and then he belongs. You don't have to worry about him anymore. You know where he fits into the landscape. So let's go back to this song sparrow study. The same four males, and look at those bold-faced letters. In this study, a young male showed up, and the bold-faced letters are the songs that the older males taught this youngster. And look where the bold-faced letters are. They're in the overlap zones. They're teaching that youngster all the shared songs, or most of the shared songs, or enough of them so that he fits in. That's the important piece. There's a couple X outliers, A here and G here, that don't fit this pattern, but they're probably overlap zones with other males that they didn't put in this diagram. So see how they're teaching him their shared songs? And then over the course of the first winter, the chance of one of these four old guys dying is pretty high. They don't live that long. And if one of them doesn't die, the next spring, that young male is the new stud. He can kick one of these old guys out and take over his territory, but he's already done the work to belong and fit into the neighborhood. He can just slip right into a territory and he's already part of the neighborhood. Super efficient, right? Isn't that great? Rob, how are we doing for time? I got a couple more slides, or I can just go to the end. What do you think?
We're bumping into it. I mean, I think it's really interesting stuff.
Okay,
I
I'll go
want
ahead
to make
and-
sure you have some time for Q&A, so I think
Yep.
maybe just kind of go quickly through the rest of it, but it's great.
No, just let me do my summary slide here because I think this is a lot we've already covered. So remember the main point I made earlier, which is that every time a bird vocalizes, it's risking its life to say something. And there's so much information that they're saying, and these are important messages to them. So in summary, each species has its own unique vocalizations, right? Each region has its own dialect. Each neighborhood has shared songs that all the males share in different ways. And then each male has its own unique voice and its own unique repertoire. And look what's going on here. These are all stacked layers of information that are all happening at the same time. There is so much going on every time a bird vocalizes, so many messages, so many layers of information. So in conclusion, I just want to say, remember the birds are taking a big chance whenever they say something, and they must be saying something important. We're beginning to understand what some of these messages might be. With this tools that allow us, the sonogram especially allow us to measure all kinds of nuances of bird songs. But I want to leave you with two really important ideas that I love. One is that although we now have this ability to measure and understand all the nuances of bird songs, we still don't understand what birds hear and what matters to them. We know it from our point of view, but we don't quite understand what's going on for them yet. And then finally, what's extraordinary is there's about 10,000 species of birds in the world, and only a handful of them, and literally only a handful, have we recorded all of their vocalizations. So remember the example of the chickadee with 14 vocalizations? Well, we know that because someone spent thousands of hours recording all of the chickadee calls of North America and figuring out that they fit into discrete categories and then naming those categories. But that amount of work has not been done for the vast majority of species, which means that you can go out with a simple microphone in your backyard, your local wild area, your park, with this free software, start recording bird calls, and a lot of what you discover will be new to science. That's incredible. I love that in this day and age that the whole world of birdsong is really so wide open to discovery and new knowledge. So I want to end on that really positive, incredible note and see if we have questions.
Yeah, thank you. That was as expected. I learned a lot and really loved it. We got a lot of great comments, including
Oh,
some people's cats really enjoyed your presentation. Some people sharing how many birds they've seen in the last couple weeks, and just some
yeah.
general, this is amazing. It's interesting and informative. So lots of great stuff.
But
We'll answer as many questions as we can get to in the next 10, 15 minutes. And then I might see if we might get a few of them answered offline as well, if that's possible. Maybe share them in the blog. I think I'm going to have to rewatch it myself, which is a good reminder that we will share the recording with folks. And if you do have questions, we're not going to be able to get to them all, but feel free to put them in into the Q&A. One that I'll just start with, we had two questions that are a little bit based on technology. One was if you could just, and I'll combine them, remind us of the name of that software you mentioned earlier on. And then also
yeah,
if you could speak to how reliable the Merlin Sound
Merlin.
ID app is.
Yes, absolutely. Great questions. Raven Light is the software. Uh, Raven, like the bird, Light, Lite. And it's a free download from the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology. You just put it on your computer and then you could play any bird songs through it. And like I mentioned, it is probably the best tool for learning how to identify birds by songs because you get to see these incredible pictures. Merlin app. Wow, that has just transformed my life. Um, so I grew up listening to bird song CDs and tapes and stuff over and over again, and they're really cool. It's a way to learn, but you have the same sound clip over and over and over again, and you try to memorize that. You try to go out in the world and try to match it up with what you're hearing in the world, which is often very different. Whereas Merlin, you just hold it up and it reads out all these birds, and it has taught me bird vocalizations that I didn't know because it's like these little chittering sounds up in the trees, and it says that is a pine siskin. Wow, I had no idea. I've never heard pine siskins making that call. It is not 100% accurate. You get the weirdest, wackiest identifications, but boy, I don't know, 95% of the time is accurate, maybe more than that, and it gets better all the time, I think. So I use Merlin all the time, almost every day. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it has also transformed my life as a person who learns them and then forgets them.
Yes.
It's really nice, and same as you, I've found some sounds that I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Well, let me just segue from that into how do you learn bird songs? Because you brought that up. It's a great point, and I get this question all the time, is like, it's overwhelming. How do I begin to learn bird songs? Well, we all know a few bird songs. You might know a crow, you might know a robin, you probably know a red-winged blackbird or a chickadee. Just start with a pool of birds that you know and just be glad you know those. That's beautiful. And then add a couple more each year. And over time, that pool of birds that you do know will expand. You don't have to learn them all the first season. Just be happy you know a pool of birds and then add a couple more to it each year. And so I think that's a great way to do it.
Cool. Another question, and for those I'm playing no favorites, just kind of picking them a little bit at random here. Do females have the same vocal anatomy as males?
Boy, I've never thought of that. But yes, they have to. I mean, evolution is conservative, so it's not going to evolve a whole different system. It might not be as robust as the male, but I don't think so because, like, if they lose their mate, they'll sing, and their vocalizations are just as loud. Um,
Yeah.
and they can switch into song if they have to in a lot of species. So it's all there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll stick with the gender questions. Can you talk about some bird species in which females sing from the nest? Are there any?
Yes, there's plenty. Well, I don't know about plenty. Or females sing from the nest? Maybe black. Well, the ones I know that sing from the nest are black-headed grosbeaks and warbling vireos, but I don't know if the females also do that. Um, yeah.
Okay.
So it's an odd question. So why would a female sing from the nest is a great question. I don't think there's any motivation to.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's a good answer. And I think it's great when it's good you're learning too. So
Exactly.
a couple of questions about hummingbirds. Somebody just said no hummers in Bend yet, but when birds roost in the trees across the road, it's like a community conversation. Then they stop until another joins and they start up again. We have finches, chickadees, blue jays, pigeons, doves, and more. Are they having an actual interaction?
They have to be, yes. I often recommend books for people if they're interested in learning more. And one book, It's called Why Birds Sing by David Rothenberg. And he's a philosopher and a musician and a composer. And his whole book, he's ruminating on why birds sing and studies all these different birds around the world and looks at all the research. And he ends up concluding like birds sing just because they can and they love to, you know? I mean, if you could sing and we sing in the shower, right? So if you could sing, why wouldn't you do that too? So yes, I think it's just it's a social thing where they're just all feeling good. It's probably safer because they're all in a big group. And so, yeah, I think it's
Okay.
probably a release for them
Okay.
of
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I often I don't know how you feel about it. We were always taught not to anthropomorphize, but I tend to think that there's a lot of joy in animals and things like that. So I personally
Absolutely. Yeah.
I like to project a little bit.
Yeah. But
Um,
also,
yeah.
just to continue with that a little bit, um, I mean, that's the kind of question no one has ever studied. Like, not the joy part, but like, what is going on in that group of birds? Um, I mean, who's ever studied that? So, I mean, and then also every single time it's going to be a different mix of birds, it's going to be a different season, it's going to be a different kind of habitat. So, how do you generalize what they're feeling and what's going on? I mean, we know so little of this whole field.
Yeah. Well, here's a question that also speaks to some humility. How do wild songbird rehabbers ever figure out where to release a bird back into the wild? Won't the released bird just be a perpetual stranger in an established neighborhood?
That's a great question. Well, birds also have an incredible ability to navigate. I have a whole nother talk I do on bird migration, and one of the examples in there is that they've done a lot of studies where they take birds, they're curious, like do birds have an internal map? Can they find their way around? So they've taken birds like white-crowned sparrows. I use those in this talk. They've taken white-crowned sparrows from California and released them in Massachusetts and Louisiana, and the next year they show up in the same quarter acre where they left from. So birds have the ability to find their way back when they need to, right? And especially like if you're a rehab site, you're probably going to be within the same valley, the same county, the same corner of the state. So birds could move around and find themselves. And also birds are adaptable. They like in some of these examples I had where the stranger shows up and can't mimic the songs, it can change its songs within a couple of days in a lot of cases. So it may not fit in right away, but it can adapt and kind of learn the local um, dialect and fit in.
Cool. I'm going to do two more questions. And again, apologies to those who we didn't get to. I did try to answer one or two in the typing, with some typed answers. One that's very specific. So why do you think brown-headed grosbeaks are singing their hearts out this time of year?
Black-headed grosbeaks?
Oh, yeah, black-headed.
Or
I'm sorry. They said
okay.
BH, so I guessed the wrong color, obviously.
Okay. Yeah, because
Sorry.
there's also brown-headed cowbirds. Black-headed grosbeak, why are they singing their hearts out? It's time to attract females. They just showed up and they are so loud and boisterous. They're often called drunken robins because they sound just like a robin, but they just go on and on and on and on and on, and they're so loud. That is how they attract the attention of females and attract mates and announce their territory. This is the season. If you're not singing now, it's not going to help you next month.
Fair enough. And then again, I think we'll just do this as the last one, and I'll see if we can maybe get some answered offline. But do migratory birds have different songs at different locations?
Yes, or different vocalizations and so a good example of that is a lot of birds will have a song during the breeding season. So, for instance, in some birds they've studied, there'll be one stud in a neighborhood who's like I don't know, quarterback of the football team that gets all the mating opportunities, and all the other males try to imitate him and start switching their songs so they imitate his songs. His song apparently is the song of the season. They all want to learn it. And the poor male that's the stud is like, oh, everyone sounds like me now. So when they migrate south for the winter, he practices and learns a new song. And then when he shows up the next spring, he's one step ahead of everyone with a new song. So yes, they're practicing and singing. I mean that, and then probably they have something totally different going on when they go south. So we think of these birds, our birds, leaving for the winter, but in fact, tropical birds come here to visit us for a couple months and then they go back. They really belong down there, and they're only here for a short period of time in the breeding season. We think of them as our birds, but in all these migrants, they really belong down there. That's their whole world. That's where they have all of the whole another set of behaviors and adaptations, and they fit into niches there, and they have probably a whole nother set of vocalizations down there too.
Super cool. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you to everybody who attended. I looked, I think we had about 115 at the max. But especially thank you, David, for taking your time to share that with us, and Danielle as well, to remind us of some important things going on. Just a reminder to everybody, lucasguides.com, and I'm not being paid to say it. I really, honestly, it's one of my favorite things that shows up in my email inbox. I don't know, every week to 10 days, something about
Tomorrow. It'll be tomorrow. So
tomorrow.
if you sign up, get tomorrow's.
There you go.
What I want to say about that too is I love to share nature stories with people and to connect with people. So feel free to reach out. Anyone can reach out to me. I'm a resource. I love to help out, answer questions. And to me, the newsletter is a conversation we're all having together. And I just seed it every week with a different, really cool topic. There's some great comments and stuff like that. But we're all learning together and sharing stories together. And the newsletter is my contribution to that. So please do sign up. I'd love to stay in touch with people and just keep this conversation going.
Yeah, which I have pestered you much over the last year, which is how we were able to do this. So yeah, thanks for your time with me this last year. Two other quick reminders, just to folks, is that the raffle is still open. So if you're inspired to get a raffle ticket, you might get a signed book from David. And then also just to flag, next week, we are excited that our webinar will be our Oregon's own Chuck Sams, who's going to be giving a presentation. We're really excited to have him. And then a reminder to everybody, keep learning, and a final reminder to also use your voice. As Danielle reminded us, use your voice, please, to speak up for birds and all of the other living things with whom we share this just incredible planet. If there was ever a time they needed your voice, it is now. So thanks to everybody for being here. And I think with that, we'll call it a night. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Danielle.
Thanks, everyone.